just me, maybe that river's just not for me, seems to work for everybody else. They're getting plenty out of their rivers, I'm not. And there you are, ready to give up and think, okay, it's just not ever going to happen for you. And so a friend comes along and says, look, let me just show you something, and takes you upstream and shows you that there, just upstream from where you were with your bucket and your bridge and all your paraphernalia that you started gathering, right up there, not all that far away, there's a few rocks sitting in the water, blocking the stream. And they're not huge boulders, they're just big rocks, and maybe a couple of them you need a bit of a hand with, but they can be moved. And as soon as they're out of the stream can actually flow, and you can fill your bucket quite easily and effortlessly. And that's kind of how a lot of people operate their business. They show up at the stream and they go, great, I've got to get a bucket, and it's got to be just the right kind of bucket. But they never look at where's that flow coming from. And the money that flows in your business actually flows from you. And those rocks sitting upstream are all your money blocks, all your old money stories, all the things that you took on that you were told by your mum and your high school teachers and your primary school teachers, and all the things that came before. And they're blocking the flow. So I'm really passionate about this, and I'm really passionate about telling people as early as possible in their business, like, clear your blocks, clear your money blocks, look at that stuff, and decide to move as many of those rocks out of the way as you can, so that when you show up at the river with your bucket, it can be fun and easy, right? Hi, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, we just started talking. So today we're going to do that. We're going to have a little bit of a look at some of the rocks and talk about some ways that you can start looking at removing them. And obviously there's only so much I can share with you, but I'm very much about giving you as many practical things as possible, not just a whole lot of theory and then you're left going, now what do I do with it? So this presentation is called Uncover Your Money Ammo, and I'll explain what that means in a little while. So Adair already introduced me a fair bit. My name is Miriam Castilla, in case you haven't caught that bit yet. I call myself an effectologist because no one really does what I do, so I had to make a word up, as you do. And effectology is about that magic of marrying the practical with the magical. It's about understanding that everything actually flows from inside of us. And then we need the practical tools in our everyday world to manage it wisely and confidently. But it all starts from within. And my mission is, I mainly work with entrepreneurial women, but my mission is to help them actually create a life of purpose, prosperity, and flow. Because when you have those three things, then you can start feeling fulfilled in what you do. You have a lovely balance in life where you're not just working in a business for double the time, half the money than you were in your job. And you get that lovely sense of prosperity, which is why we go into business. We don't go into business to work harder and earn less money. We often do for a while, but eventually the idea is that we're creating something that's a legacy, we're creating something that gives us a lifestyle. But many people get stuck in just the trying to get there and think, this lifestyle thing certainly isn't happening. So that's what I'm all about, and that's what effectology is. It's about that trifecta, and it's about doing it from the inside out. Now, I used to be an engineer, so my original career was as a petroleum engineer and then a corporate analyst. So I'm very good at getting stuff done. I'm very good at systems and processes and being really efficient and effective. Not a problem. But what I learned over my time is that that's all great and you need those skills, but if you don't get what's going on inside of you right, you're going to work a hell of a lot harder than you need to. So I had the engineering career, I had the corporate development career. I decided I wasn't happy because I never really sat back to work out who I was and what I wanted and what would fulfill me. So I quit, and everybody thought I was nuts because I had everything on paper, but I wasn't happy. And so I went into small business. My ex-husband's a conveyancer, and I helped him build his business. And I had a couple of children who were gorgeous, and it's the best thing I've ever done. And a few years down the track, I realised that he wasn't fulfilling me either, so I quit that as well. And unfortunately, that kind of landed me in a position where I hadn't worked in my career for 8 years. I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and all our assets were kind of, well, I hadn't paid attention, and I was left with nothing. Seriously nothing. I literally had a day where I stood in the supermarket crying because my bill ended up being $10 over what it was meant to be. So I was going around, I don't know if anyone's ever been in that position, but I was literally going around the shelves, adding up each item in my head as I went, and I'd stuffed up somewhere along the way. And when I got to the checkout, it was $10 over my budget, and I just burst into tears. But that was a really powerful moment, because I realised that I was never going to end up in that place again. You know, whatever it was that brought me there, I was never going to allow that to happen again. And so from there, I started a new business, because I had these 2 children, and it was really important for me to be there for them and not to go back to a 9-to-5 job, not to go back into a really demanding career where I had to work weekends and late hours for somebody else. So instead I worked weekends and late hours for myself. And I started a business in finance. So I became a mortgage broker, and within a few years, the business had taken off. It was really successful. I won some national awards. You know, I did the whole 6-figure income, bought a couple of investment properties thing, and it was all really good, except I was a workaholic. And so from there, I had to kind of find that balance piece again, the flow. So like I say, I'm my own guinea pig, and everything I've learned along the way, I have now brought together into what I teach. And it was also through that journey of going from crying in the supermarket to building myself back up into somebody who had a business and had a sustainable financial background, that I tapped into the power of the unconscious mind, and I went back into looking at, you know, what is it that makes some people successful and some people not when they're doing exactly the same thing? How did I allow myself to get into this place where I thought I wasn't capable or worthy of being successful, where I stood in a supermarket crying over $10 when I'd had this amazing career? You know, what happened and what went on inside of me? So fast forward a few more years, and I decided I would write a book, which is this one, Today's Woman Life Balance Secrets. And I'm going to give one away as a door prize, and I brought some extras as well. And that became an international bestseller, so that's really cool. And it's available in bookstores or on my website. And that was fabulous. So I set out from there to teach women how to create a life of balance and flow, and how to get the money piece right as well. And after a while, I realised that I needed a little bit more. So I went to the US and I did the Infinite Possibilities Certified Trainer training with Mike Dooley. Does anyone know who Mike Dooley is? So back when The Secret came out, he was one of the teachers in that. And he also writes the notes from the universe. And he's got about 1 million people on his database. So I went to the US and I studied with him, and he personally trained me, which was really cool. And since then, I've gone back several times to actually help run the program and train more trainers. So this thoughts becoming things concept is really powerful, and it's a really beautiful way to understand how we create our reality and how it is that we get what we get from what goes on inside of us. And I added to that becoming a hypnotherapist, as a dare is, because it really is all about your unconscious power. Your unconscious mind is this incredible powerhouse, and we don't know how to operate it. Nobody gives you the manual. So I'm into quick, easy and efficient. So between being a hypnotherapist, doing the Infinite Possibilities trainer training, and knowing how to manage money for starters as a finance advisor, and also knowing how to make shit happen. Am I allowed to swear when I'm live on Facebook? Sorry, you asked me in this room, yes.
Okay.
So that's where this whole effectology concept came from. So it's a whole lot of fun. Now I get to run workshops, online courses. I'm off to Bali to run a retreat next month, And I do some one-on-one work with my clients as well, and I help them, you know, the bigger rocks that are in the river, I help them kind of lift them out.
Okay, we've just got a comment here.
We've got a comment.
Yura I'm not sure if I'm going to actually pronounce this properly. Ho Ipa is wanting to know, is this an idea you've made by choice? And also says, I can hear you talk about children and not being happy with your past career choice. I'm trying to get a picture of what led you to current journey. I think they might have missed the first part of your talk, so perhaps I'm going to suggest that they, when we finish, they can rewatch it and get the first part, which will be the journey that they're asking about, I think.
Or read my book.
Or read the book, yes.
Available on the website.
So,
but thank you for your questions.
Yeah. Okay, keep them coming.
Yeah,
so,
keep them coming.
I've put about you on that slide, but, you know, apart from being here for the regular networking event, hopefully you were aware about the topic that we were going to cover. And as a small business owner, you know, this is probably, I saw a lot of heads nodding, this is quite a familiar thing. You get started and you're full of enthusiasm and excitement, and then eventually you go, hang on a minute, this is a lot harder than I thought. And really, what we want from our business is we want that joy, we want that enthusiasm, and we want to get into that flow and know that we're putting out into the world our own special thing. And we want it to continue to be joyful, and it can very quickly get disheartening if the money's not flowing, because unfortunately in our world, money's really important. So if the money's not flowing, it doesn't matter how much you love what you do, it can become impossible, or you may have to go back to doing it as a hobby or an altruistic thing and taking a day job. So money is really important, and when I say that it all flows from inside of you, it is actually important to take that step back and look at what's going on in you and look at where all those money stories and those belief systems and those blocks came from. Because one thing I can promise you, none of it is as scary as it wants you to believe. None of it. So when I have, and I'm sure Adair finds this as well, when I do a one-on-one session with people and they come in with, you know, the big problem, they cannot believe how much things can shift completely in an hour. Doesn't that happen to you all the time?
Yes.
Because none of it is as scary as it wants you to believe it is. Our old habit patterns hide in our unconscious because that's where they're safe. That's where they can manipulate and pull the strings and run the show and have you think that you're a victim. But it's never as scary as you think. So one of the things we're doing today is we're going to shine a light. We're going to shine a light on some of those things. I'll give you a few tips on how to get started. And just that awareness is incredible power, because when something comes into your conscious awareness, it's no longer lurking in the shadows. There are no shadow monsters under your bed. When you actually get the torch out and shine it under there, it's like, there's nothing there. Or it's a little mouse and you thought it was some big scary monster. So just awareness alone is really powerful. I think I've already covered what effectology is. It's about purpose, balance and prosperity, and actually getting the flow going from the inside out. So let's get into it. What is your money MO? Okay, so what it is, it's actually just the sum of your money habits and your money beliefs. So how you habitually operate around money and what it is you believe about money. Pardon me, water. So how do we uncover and change that? Where do we begin? Can everybody see okay? Yeah. So we want to, first of all, we want to discover what's going on. We want to start diffusing what's going on. And we want to direct the flow to where we do want it to go. So let's go through that. And can Fiona or someone, can you give me a heads up when we've got like 5-10 minutes left, just so that I have a rough idea? Just give me a wave or come and drag me off. I'm still talking. Okay. So we'll start with number 1. Discover. Right, so what are your money habits? You know, when we say money habits, what does that even mean? So habits are nothing but unconscious patterns. So we have habitual ways of doing all sorts of things, and when they become so ingrained in our nervous system that we no longer have to consciously think about them, it becomes a habit. It's something we do without giving it any thought. And can anyone think of a habit they have that they don't even think about?
Getting dressed.
Getting dressed. Yeah. Anything else? Brushing your teeth, exactly. Do you sometimes leave the house and wonder if you even did that?
Or driving through red light. Or driving
You don't wonder if you got dressed.
Yeah, driving through intersections and wondering if there was a red light or a green light. So we do things habitually because we do them over and over again, and because our body and our mind is such an efficient organism, it says, do you know what? You're doing this all the time. You don't need to waste energy thinking about that anymore. The unconscious takes it over, and literally the body becomes the mind. So this stuff happens without us even stopping to think about it. It just happens. And that's both a wonderful thing, and it can also be a dangerous thing, because some of those patterns and habits don't serve us and aren't doing us any favours. So, like we said, you know, it's like learning to ride a bike, learning to drive a car. In the beginning, when you're driving a car, it's all, especially if you're learning to drive a manual or 3 on the tree like I did in a rusted out Kingswood HQ.
Oh my God, so did I.
You barely see over the steering wheel. The same vintage. You know, there's so much to think about. But after a while, you know, these days you're texting, putting on lipstick, you know, you're doing all sorts of things.
Not.
And you're not even thinking about it. And like Fiona said, you get so far down the road and you think, I cannot remember the last 5 sets of traffic lights. What the hell happened? So we do this with all sorts of things. Some things that are helpful, some things that are unhelpful. It just happens automatically. And that's, like I said, because your nervous system is such a highly efficient thing. So we lay neural pathways in our nervous system and they just fire automatically. And the more often we use them, the more deeply they get wired in, because it's an efficient organism. Our body is amazing. And so when we do those things over and over again, they just get wired in. And then we don't have to think about it. They fire automatically. Now that happens with things like driving your car, riding your bike. It also happens with things like thought patterns. It happens with things like automatic habit patterns. You know, have you ever kind of gone out and ended up buying all this stuff you didn't really need, and then you got home and went, what the hell was I thinking and what happened? You kind of go unconscious and you're just doing all this stuff, and then you get home and it's like, it was my evil twin. She bought the extra shoes. So we do all these things and they're not necessarily rational because it's an unconscious habit pattern, and the unconscious is also the seat of our emotions. So when there's an emotional charge around something, it becomes even more difficult. There's something else running the show. Okay, so this is really important, so if you've got a pen and paper, write it down. A habit is an automatic and unconscious pattern in your nervous system. That's it. It's not some big scary thing that you can't get your head around. It's just an automatic and unconscious pattern in your nervous system. Now, habit includes all sorts of things. Habits of thinking, habits of perceiving, habits of reacting, habits of emotion. And emotions are even one further, because emotions are actually chemicals running through your bloodstream, and they're highly addictive. So who knows somebody who's addicted to drama? Who's married to somebody who's addicted to drama? Who knows somebody who's addicted to stress? You know, who knows somebody who's addicted to always being the victim? Yeah. So it's like any other drug. It becomes your new normal, and then you will unconsciously create a situation to get your next hit, because it's just normal. And so we develop these unconscious patterns that keep us at that level. And we all have our own little drug addictions, you know. Worry. Worry is an emotion. It's a sorry. Well, you're projecting that. So isn't that interesting? So we have these automatic and unconscious patterns in our nervous system. Now, that may sound a little bit scary, but like I said, it's not as scary as it seems, because just the awareness alone is enough. So when we say something is an unconscious pattern and we suddenly notice it, what does that mean? It means we've become consciously aware of it. So the moment you become consciously aware of something, it's no longer an unconscious pattern. So immediately you've actually weakened that link. Are there any smokers in the room who would like to give up? Oh wow, healthy bodies. So even something like smoking, it's a habit pattern. It's actually not addictive. Tobacco companies want you to believe that. It's just habit forming. Because if it was addictive, you'd need more and more and more like any other drug user until you OD and die. But no one's died from actually smoking, just the side effects. So if you wanted to stop smoking, and this goes for smoking and any other habit, if you just use a little technique called delay and distract, you actually weaken that pattern. So say you're a smoker and you reach for your packet of cigarettes and you pull out a cigarette and you just go, okay, I'm just going to delay and distract. So you go, in a minute, rather than saying, no, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm not smoking anymore. What that actually does is it reinforces the pattern. It actually reinforces how much you want that, and when you give it that energy, you're actually making it stronger. So instead of fighting it, which doesn't work and it just makes it more powerful, you delay, because your conscious mind is really used, your unconscious mind is really used to having to wait for your unconscious mind. So you go, oh, in a minute. Your conscious mind is fairly slow compared to your unconscious mind. So your unconscious mind is this incredible supercomputer that's aware of God knows how many millions of bits of information just in this room. Whereas your conscious mind can only take in so much at a time. So your conscious mind's a bit slow. Sorry to tell you, we're all a bit slow. But our unconscious isn't. So when you say in a minute and you delay, that doesn't actually cause a reaction. That doesn't cause resistance, because your unconscious is used to that. In a minute, I've got to catch up, I'm a bit slow. And then you distract yourself. So, what's a good way to distract yourself for 2 minutes or more? Get on Facebook.
You'll lose the rest of your life.
Later, you go, now, where was I? That's right, I was going to have a cigarette. So even if you still go ahead and have that cigarette, you've actually weakened that pattern in your nervous system. So delaying and distracting is really powerful. So I've already given you two really powerful things that seem like nothing, but they're extremely powerful. So number one is awareness, and number two is delay and distract. Because it's just an automatic and unconscious pattern in your nervous system. When you become consciously aware of it, you're immediately weakening it. It's because you're bringing it up. Now let's go back to money. So money, we have habit patterns around money. We have thinking and feeling patterns around money. So even when I say the word money and you think about your money, you're going to notice some feelings, some emotions. And it could be anything from, if I say to you, okay, how's your money situation and how are you going with the bills this month? It could be, oh yeah, all good. Or it could be awesome. Or it might be, oh God, don't remind me. It could be a whole range of things. So notice what's going on and know that that feeling creates a thought, and that thought has consequences, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the outcome ultimately of your money situation is not so much about your income, it's actually about your habits. So I've got a really quick maths example for you to illustrate. So say we've got 3 siblings, Mary, Kate and Tom, and they all work at McDonald's. They're making $650 a week after tax. So that's what they take home. So Tom, because he's the boy, sorry, he spends all his money, he has a great time. And 40 years down the track, he has nothing in the bank. And he says, well, it's because I was working at McDonald's and I was only ever making $650 a week, and no one can live off that, and that's just not enough. Fair enough? Meanwhile, his sister Mary would put $50 every week when she'd get home into her piggy bank, because this McDonald's pays in cash. So she puts the money in her piggy bank, and after 40 years, she has $104,000, just a bit over. Awesome. So Mary goes, you know what? You've got nothing. I've got $104,000. We both earned the same. So don't tell me that we didn't earn enough, because you can live off $600 a week just as well as you can live off $650 a week. But along comes Kate, and she's a little bit smarter. She actually invests her $50 a week at, say, 8%. So does anybody want to guess what she has after 40 years?
$1 million.
Over $1 million? Any other guesses? You're close, very close. $928,263. And, you know, that's a flat rate and all of that. But that's pretty good. And Tom has nothing, because he only ever made $650 a week. And in fact, if Kate had gotten a return of 10%, she'd have almost $1.8 million in the bank. Or if she just put $100 a week aside at the 8%, she'd still have $1.8 million. Yes?
Yeah, but in 40 years, no financial crisis, no crash at the share market. Not realistic, really. I don't believe that there were 40 years of 8%.
So
she could have had more, or she could have gone up and down, yes.
yeah, so as an average of 8%, that's what you would get. So I'm not giving you financial advice, but I'm making a point, right? That if you invested and get a return, the difference is going to be significant. So it's the same income, 3 different ways of approaching it, 3 very different outcomes. I mean, I can do the numbers for you at 6% or 5%, it doesn't really matter. Even if Kate ended up with double what Mary ended up with from investing, it's a better outcome.
You'll find your average is about 10% over a period of time.
Yeah, like the longer the period, the
That's why
more
we project
stable
10%.
the average actually is. Okay? Yep. So the point is that she did something different and she got a significantly different outcome. We're not selling any investment products, don't worry. I'm not making any claims. So let's have a look at money habits, right? So I want you to have a look at this and see which pattern you fall into, and don't just think about it now in terms of, well, this is my financial situation now, because your habit as a child will likely be the same habit archetype that you have now, will likely be the same that you have forever unless you do something to change it. So you might be an accumulator. An accumulator is somebody who always puts some away for a rainy day. So in my life, the best example of an accumulator I have is my mother. So my mother went through a really hard time after she and my dad split up. We actually moved here from Germany when I was almost 13, and she had to go work in a commercial laundry for $5 an hour. She managed to buy a house, pay it off, and I remember seeing her shopping list one day and she had 2 Brussels sprouts, 25 cents written on it, because she's an accumulator. Whereas my dad, who was actually a diplomat and making tax-free fabulous money, died broke. So there's my mum, $5 an hour, paid off her house. She lives in a lovely townhouse at Mawson Lakes, all paid off, retired, happy. My dad died broke, age 63, and he'd been on multiple 6-figure income for well over 30 years, tax-free. So mum is definitely an accumulator, and I'm a really happy mix of the 2 of them. So an accumulator is somebody who, for example, when I run, oh no, we don't do it in Money Manifestable, but we do it in the boot camp. I have one lady who's an accumulator, and the way you know an accumulator is that they have savings in the bank and they never think it's enough. So we were all discussing what was going on, and she said, look, I can't, no, I'm not an accumulator, I can't be, because my savings have dropped below $10,000 and it's just stressing me out so much. And other people in the group piped up and went, I've got $5. So an accumulator always thinks that what they have got in the bank isn't enough. They need to have something put aside. Or you might be a spender. So a spender is somebody who always spends everything as it comes in. They're always at break even. You know, money in, money out. They have a good time, but nothing really left to show for it. And that's a habit pattern. Or you might be an overextender. An overextender is somebody who'll always spend that little bit extra. Extra pair of shoes, put it on the credit card, you know, extra holiday, we'll pay it off later, buy the bigger house, take the bigger loan, and it's a habit pattern. And they're probably the kid who always bums money off their brothers and sisters as well and never paid them back. So it's a habit pattern. So you can have a look at those and think, okay, where do I recognise myself? And there's no right or wrong, because to be honest, the only thing that truly matters is whether or not you feel comfortable where you are. My dad died with debt, he was happy as Larry. It's all good. If it's not stressing you out, who's going to judge? But if it's stressing you out, then you might want to look at what's driving it. So, accumulator, spender, overextender, you know, very broadly, and some people float between the two, but you'll find that especially if you look back to where you were as a younger child, you'll recognise yourself more so in one of those, and you tend to drift back to it. So, that's discover, you know, start having a look. So number 2 is diffuse. So what's causing those habits? Well, habits are always driven, like we said, a habit is an automatic and unconscious pattern in your nervous system. And your habit of thinking is driven by a belief. So a belief is just a thought you're in the habit of thinking. And your beliefs around money will determine your habits, will determine the way you operate around money. You know, there's just never enough, or there's always plenty, or there's always plenty more coming. So for example, if you're a spender, most spenders will believe that that's all right, plenty more where that came from, or it'll always work itself out. Whereas an accumulator, even though most of us want to be an accumulator, a lot of accumulators are actually driven by fear. They're driven by beliefs of there's just not enough, you can't be safe, and so on. So again, it's not about what's in the bank, how secure are you, it's about how you're feeling about it all. So a belief is just a thought you're in the habit of thinking. So a lot of people will be really fearful of their limiting beliefs, and you know, it's true, like your limiting beliefs kind of cause us to walk around like that. We carry all the crap from our past and we always bring it with us into the present moment, and so then it informs our future, you know, determines where we go next, because we carry it like it's some sort of badge of honour. But what it's actually doing is it's not allowing us to see clearly where we want to go next, because when you're so focused on the problem, you can't see the solution. But when you look at a belief and you say, well, it's just a thought I'm in the habit of thinking, and we already know that habits can be changed and diffused and weakened quite easily, then it's suddenly not such a scary thing. So, and I'm sure Adair has the same, there's other hypnotherapists in the group, isn't there? The last time I spoke there were like 3. So, you know, people come in with their limiting beliefs and they go, I'm doomed, I've got limiting beliefs. I'm like, not for long. It's not a big deal, it's just a habit. It's just a pattern in your nervous system, and they can be changed. And your unconscious knows exactly how to do it. Okay, so I'm just going to show you this. I do have time for it. I've got time, good. Because this is a really cool little video that I show in my workshops. And it just goes to show that we can't trust what we think we see, because we all come to every situation, everything that happens in life, with our own preconceived notions. Now, this is an example of perceptual adaptation, but it makes the point. So, just, and the sound's not important. So who found that a little bit annoying? So your mind, we all think that our eyes are these video cameras and that everything we see is exactly as it appears to us. And the point I'm making is that nothing is as it appears to you. Everything is only as it appears to you. And how it appears to you isn't how it appears to somebody else. And how it appears to someone on this side of the room is not how it appears to somebody on that side of the room. Because we all bring to every situation, every opportunity, every problem, every obstacle, we bring with us all our preconceived ideas, all our beliefs, all our habit patterns, all our wiring. So that's why two people can come to the exact same opportunity and one will do amazing things with it and the other one might even just discard it and not even consider it. And that's why two people can be in the same business. Have you ever seen like two similar restaurants next to each other and one's full of people and the other one's empty? Anything? What? So, you know, what is that? What is that? Because two people, similar thing, same opportunity, same area, right next door. So we all think that our brain and our eyes are these video cameras and everything we see and perceive is the truth. But there is no ultimate truth because every single thing you observe and every single thing that you interpret is through the filters of your own preconceived ideas, your own beliefs, your own habits, your own everything that you bring along to the party. So we all have these money belief systems and I've just done some broad categorizing and you may recognize yourself or somebody else in one or more of these. So beliefs around money, like using money as a way to gain security and control, the ruler. Using money as a way to be the martyr. Oh, you know, that's okay, you have some. Or the peasant. The peasant is a really common one. Oh, you know, it's just not for us. That stuff never works for us. We're not those kinds of people. You know, rich people have all the breaks. Not on our side of town. And all this BS. Or the magician, which is my dad. I'll just spend it all and it'll magically reappear. Or the sage who sort of has a little bit of a grip on it. So, you know, you might look at those and go, okay, where do I fit in and where does that stuff come from? And usually it comes from our early childhood conditioning. It comes from the things that we were told growing up. It comes from the very first experiences we had around money and often not even around money. It's actually, money is just a symptom. Money is a symbol of abundance. And in our society, it's also a symbol of worth. And what I find in my work is that the idea that I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough is actually at the root of most people's money issues. And once we clear that up, the money starts to flow. Magically. They'll go on a holiday, they'll make more money than they did in the month they were slogging it out at their desk. And in fact, that's often a really good idea because if you've got money issues and you're the one who's putting the rocks in the river, you going on a holiday is actually a really good way to allow that river to start flowing. Has anyone ever noticed that when you let go and you like just step away from it, suddenly it all fixes itself magically? Interesting, isn't it? Okay, so have a think, you know, how do I see money? Yes? Oh, how much have I got left? No, we'll be right. So how do you see money? And in my workshops, I actually pass out coloured sunglasses, just as an illustration to say, look, we all see the world differently. Become aware of that, make your peace with that, and realise that if it's just a pair of coloured lenses through which you've chosen to see the world, you can actually take them off. Because it's all going on inside your head, and you have control. And none of it is as scary or as hard as you think it is. Okay, so number 3. So we want to install some new habits and beliefs. And what I'm going to do is, just really quickly show you a couple of really interesting ways that the mind works that you can utilise to your advantage to install new patterns and belief systems. So the mind works with triggers and associations. You've probably all heard that term before, triggers, associations. So I'm just going to pop up a picture on the screen, and I'd like everyone to yell out at the top of their voice the first word that comes to mind that you associate with the thing on the picture. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Lion.
Power. What else was there?
A lion.
Lion. Yes, it's a lion. Power. Anything else?
Fear.
Fear.
How close is it?
How close is it? Yeah. And you know, some people say Africa and whatever. So there's no right or wrong answer, but that's an illustration. So the lion's a trigger.
Oh,
and,
fierce.
Power, fierce. Yeah.
Got fierce from here.
Fierce. All those things, they're the first thing you associate with it. So they're the most dominant neural pathway in your nervous system. Make sense? So that's really important to know. And also the other thing that's really, really helpful in the work that I help people with is that the mind doesn't like contradictions. So I'm going to flash up some words, and I want you all to yell out the colour of the word. Are you ready?
Green.
Blue. Red. Purple. Blue.
Pink. Yeah, good. So what's going on there? So we're conditioned to read words. So the first neural pathway that fires is you read the word and you go, no, that's not what you told me to do. So even though you know it's wrong, it still fires, right? So that's the most dominant neural pathway. But the beautiful thing is that because the mind doesn't like contradictions and it doesn't like two opposing thoughts at the same time, what we can actually do is we can just start building some beautiful new neural pathways, and automatically the old ones will weaken, because your mind is an efficient organism and it's going to go, well, she or he isn't really using that very much, but this one's starting to become a bit of a pattern, you know, like learning to drive, like learning to tie your shoelaces. So that will get wired in. So we can literally, by delaying and distracting over here, becoming aware, noticing it, we're weakening it. That's actually all you have to do, and it's only the really big things or things you want to accelerate that you might get some help with, one-on-one, you know, hypnosis or something like that. And meanwhile, you just get busy wiring in the new stuff. And there's some really cool ways you can do that. So the mind thinks in pictures, and pictures are a great way to wire in triggers and associations. So visualization is actually really powerful, which is why Olympic athletes have been using it since the 70s. It was like the Russian secret super weapon in the 70s. And Jackie Cooper, Australian Winter Olympian, she couldn't train for 6 weeks leading up to the, I forget which Winter Olympics it was, but it was the one where she won a bronze medal, sorry. And for the 6 weeks leading up, she had an ankle injury and just visualized. And you know, there's lots and lots of examples of visualization being used. So that's a really powerful way. So it is a matter of using it or losing it. So the more you use certain neural pathways, and that comes down to the stories you tell yourself and the way you approach money. So if you've got a habit of saying some really unproductive, unresourceful things like, oh, that'll never work for me, or it never works out for me, become aware, stop saying that, and start saying something a little bit more empowering. I wonder how it can work out. Well, things seem to kind of, you know, find something that can work for you, that you're not going to straight away balk at. Like, things do seem to kind of work themselves out. Don't always know how, but it always works out in the end. And I haven't lost the roof over my head yet. Hopefully no one in here has. So neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you use it, the more you wire it in. Or you lose it. Neurons that are out of sync fail to link. And if it rhymes, it must be true. Okay, so super fast. This is how thoughts become things. So this is the work I do with the Infinite Possibilities program. And most people operate like this. They're observing reality and they go, well, that's fair and reasonable. There's things happening in my life. They're going to tell me how life works, so that's how I develop my belief system. And then depending on what I believe about the world will determine how I perceive everything to happen, because when something happens, I have a belief, so that means I perceive it in a certain way. That determines how I feel about it, and how I feel about it will determine how I think, speak and act. Seems fair and reasonable, but what they miss is that this is a cycle. And the way you think, speak and act determines what you get out of life. So what most people are actually in the habit of doing is just living Groundhog Day. They're creating the same thing over and over and over again, going, well, but it's true, that's how it is. And so they just get more and more and more of the same. So the thing you want to start doing is start shifting some of these things so that you can create new things, new life experiences, by shifting your beliefs so that you can perceive different things, so you can see the opportunities, get the ideas that were always there that you just weren't even open to before because you were so tunnel visioned in your old way of seeing things. And as you start feeling differently, then you can start thinking, speaking and acting differently. And have I got a slide on this? Can't remember. So you want to rewire your brain. You want to weaken the old patterns, wire up a new one. And the key really is persistence and consistency. So one really quick example I can give you, and I've kind of hinted at it before, if you've got a habitual way of reacting to something. So for example, if you get a really big bill at a restaurant or somewhere, most of us will go, and maybe quickly check the internet banking. But you can train yourself to weaken that pattern, because as innocuous as that may seem, that's really symptomatic. The little things are the big things. So the little things are the symptoms of the big rocks that are lurking beneath in the unconscious that are driving the show. So pay attention and weaken those little things with a pattern interrupt. And it can be as simple as training yourself to say something like, lucky I'm rich. And so that's a pattern interrupt. Just like the example I gave you with the stop smoking, it stops that automatic pattern from firing in your nervous system. And your whole system kind of goes, oh, hang on, that's a bit out of character. So that cycle is kind of being knocked off its axis a little bit. So all these little things persistently and consistently being done will make a huge difference. So the moral of the story is this stuff is so easy that most people skip over it and look for hard, or just go, well, it just is how it is, because they cannot get their head around that their big problems can be solved by such simple little things. But they can. I just want to give you one thing quickly, because I am out of time. The number one thing people do wrong that just causes, and you'll understand this now hopefully, I've gone through it very fast, but I think you've got enough information to understand this now. The number one mistake people make when it comes to money, when it's a problem in their life, is they keep focusing on it. And the more they focus on it, the more they reinforce the fact that this is a problem, that this is the way things are, and so that neural pathway gets wired in deeper. And so the way they feel about that becomes more of a pattern. So then they become more addicted to that emotion, which means they create more circumstances to create those chemicals again. And if you want to go to the spiritual level, where all is vibration, they're actually also putting out that electromagnetic signature. They're all about, there's not enough, there's never enough, there's just not enough for me. So if money is a problem, that's why it's a good idea to just go take a little bit of a holiday. It's actually a really good thing to do. It usually just allows things to kind of find their right place again, because you know what? Life is actually about growth and evolution. And there's a natural order in the universe where trees know how to grow. They don't stress out about it. They don't go, oh my God, wrong branch first, I'm doomed now. Birds know how to grow and evolve and how to progress. But humans have this beautiful conscious mind, and it actually is a place that we get ourselves trapped in a lot of the time. But growth and evolution is actually a natural order of things. And when you get out of the way, it's amazing how much magic can actually unfold. So give it a try. The next time you're really stressed about money, go for a walk on the beach. The next time something's just not working out, take yourself outside, just find something to distract yourself and just kind of get out of the way a little bit. And you'll find just by doing that, you're not adding more rocks into that river to choke the flow. Cool. So thoughts become things, and there's a lot you can do just with little simple tips, little tricks you can play to shift that, so that you're not constantly recreating the same old over and over again. And I've tried to give you as many things as possible, but ultimately, to me, it's about healing your relationship with money by starting to take good care of it, knowing how to do that, not being afraid of it anymore, and dealing with what's going on the inside, so that you can actually come at it from a whole different perspective. So if you'd like to do a little bit more on that, here's my quick 5-second ad. I've got a 7-day Facebook challenge called 7-Day Money Manifesto. Well, that Adea's done how many times?
3 or 4, I think. That'd be the 4th one, I think, this week.
You actually did?
Um,
Finish this time?
no. I will. I keep coming back till I finish it. That's it. It's my own. It's my own blocks. It says a lot about.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
People get to a certain day, and then they kind of go, "Oh, I'm busy over here," because their blocks come up, and their old patterns will fight for survival. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then they'll come back next time, and they'll move past that and go, "Oh, good, I finally got that monkey off my back." So it runs for 7 days. It's run in a Facebook group. It's a lot of fun, but it's very powerful, and I'm changing it so that everybody will now be a lifetime member.
Awesome.
Because it's actually really good to have the people in there who've done it before. So if you'd like to join us for that, it's $28 to join, and you will now be a lifetime member. So it's cheap as chips, but I decided today if you wanted, you can actually have it for free. So, but there's a catch. You have to buy a copy of my book, and then I'll give you a little discount code, and you can actually have it for free. So I'll throw Money Manifesto in for free if you want to grab a copy of my book, of which I've brought several there. They're $29.95. And if you don't want a copy of my book, you can still do Money Manifesto. We'll just have to pay for it. So if you do the maths, like just buy a book, give it to somebody, even if you don't want it for yourself. So that is me done. I hope you got lots out of that. I know I threw a lot of things at you, but even if you got 1 or 2 things, make sure you note them down.